God bless you, dear students. Today we are going to begin with a new chapter of your second unit test syllabus, that is lesson 7, Pip and the Convict, written by Charles Dickens. And here I am going to tell you something about the author also. Charles Dickens was born on 7 February 1812 in England, and he was one of the greatest English novelists of the 19th century. His works are particularly noted for their detailed insight into the life of the poor and the rich in the city of London. Some of his famous novels include David Copperfield, Oliver Twist, and Hard Times. Okay, so children, this chapter, Pip and the Convict, which I am going to teach you, has been taken from the novel Great Expectations, written by Charles Dickens. And this is a story about a young boy named Pip, who is an orphan and living with his elder sister, Mrs. Joe, and her husband, Joe Gargery, who is a blacksmith. Here Pip visits to the graveyard where his parents are buried, and there he has an escaped meeting with a convict. And convict means a person who has been found guilty of a crime and put in prison. So after all that, how Pip deal with this situation, let's know about it by reading and understanding the chapter. So let's begin now from page number 67. So here I'm going to read the paragraphs, and accordingly to that I will explain you about the story. So let's begin. In England, in a lonely village not far from London, lived a little boy named Philip, whom everybody called Pip. He lost his parents when he was a baby and had been brought up by his older sister, the wife of Joe Gargery, a blacksmith whose forge looked out across wide marshes and a river that flowed through them. Okay, so here in this paragraph, the word lonely means isolated, and this one, blacksmith means a person who makes or repairs the things made up of iron, and marshes means wet area of land, and forge, that is a place where a blacksmith works. Okay, Joe the blacksmith was a wild, honest, good-natured, easy-going, foolish, dear fellow, kind to little Pip, and yet a Hercules for strength. Here Hercules is just used as a character from Greek mythology known for his great strength. Okay, so now let me explain it. In England, in a lonely village which was not very far from the city London, there lived a little boy whose actual name was Philip, but he was called Pip by everybody. And this little boy, when he was a baby, had lost his parents, and since then he was just staying with his elder sister, Mrs. Joe, who was the wife of blacksmith, and whose name here Joe Gargery, and whose forge was looking wide from marshy area and a river that flowed between them. And here in this story, Joe the blacksmith is a very honest person who is very good-natured, very kind and dear fellow to Pip, and also he mixed up with everyone, and he is very caring about his family and for this little boy Pip. So Joe, also known as Hercules for his strength, as whenever he has to prove his strength for his family. So that's why he just known here as Hercules. Okay, now let's see the next paragraph. Very different indeed was Mrs. Joe, as everybody called her. She was tall and bony and had black hair, red skin, and a continual habit of scolding. She may have loved Pip in her way, but in a very cross-grained one. She treated Joe, the big blacksmith, and Pip, the little boy, just alike, and both of them were equally afraid of her. Whenever Pip came into the house, he used to look at Joe's fingers. If Joe crossed them, it was a sign that Mrs. Joe was cross and that Pip was to look out for himself. Okay? So now, Pip's elder sister, Mrs. Joe. Actually, she was totally different, as everybody called her. And she looked tall but very thin and had black hair, red skin, and having a habit of scolding. She also loved Pip very much, but in her way. And also she was very bad-tempered. And she treated her husband and Pip in the same way, and they both equally afraid of her. So whenever Pip entered the house, he always used to look at Joe's fingers and some sign, and it was a sign that if Mrs. Joe is angry, then Joe gradually crossed his fingers, and by looking at the fingers, Pip understood, and he just looked out the way for himself. But this Mrs. Joe, she just loved equally to both her husband and her youngest brother. Okay, so next is, besides the blacksmith, the only one who understood Pip was a little girl named Biddy. About his own age and also an orphan, she used to help him with the lessons at school. In spite of Joe and Biddy, Pip was sometimes so lonely and miserable that he would steal off alone to the village churchyard, where his father and mother lay buried to cry. So here the word is steal off. It means slip away silently, or just to move slowly or silently. Okay, so there was a little girl, and whose name is Biddy, and so along with the blacksmith, she also understood Pip, and she was also about Pip's own age and was an orphan, and this girl used to help Pip with his lessons at school. Although Pip had a company of Joe and Biddy, then also sometimes he felt very lonely and missed his parents. So because of it, sometimes what he used to do, he silently moved away to the village churchyard. Churchyard means here means the graveyard, where the dead persons are buried. So he just went there, and he lay down to the graves of his parents who were buried over there, and he just cried. Okay, now the next is, one afternoon the day before Christmas, Pip, feeling more wretched than usual and was crying among the graves, suddenly a rough voice startled him. "Keep still, you little imp," it said, "or I will cut your throat." Then a man rose from behind a tombstone and seized Pip. Okay, now one afternoon, just the day before Christmas, Pip was feeling very lonely and unhappy. So he went there to graveyard and he was crying among the graves. Okay, so here in this paragraph, the word wretched, it means very unhappy. And this startled means surprised or slightly frightened. And imp means here small creature like a devil. Okay, so just all of a sudden he heard somebody's very rough voice, and which made him surprised and slightly frightened. And that person whose voice frightened him was saying to Pip that, "You small creature, be seated there, otherwise I will cut your throat." Okay, then what happened that he saw that a man rose behind a tombstone and took hold on Pip. Acha, tombstone means that large flat stone which is just there on the grave, and where the dead person's name and their date of birth and the date of their death, it is just engraved there. Okay, now the next is, then a man rose from behind a tombstone and seized Pip. He was a fearful looking man dressed in grey clothes with a great iron band riveted. Riveted means fastened. So on his leg, his shoes were torn and he wore a ragged, dirty handkerchief around his head, completely drenched and caked with mud. The man limped and shivering as he walked. Okay, so this man was looking very dangerous, and he just dressed in grey clothes and a big iron band fastened on his leg, and he was wearing torn shoes and a very untidy and dirty handkerchief and tied around his head. And the man was just completely covered with mud, and he was limping and shivering when he walked. Now, Pip had never been so frightened in his life. With a trembling voice he begged, "Spare me, please." The man asked him his name and where he lived. Okay, then and told him that he would let him go on one condition. Pip would have to promise to come back the next morning at daybreak to a certain spot in the marshes with a sharp file and something to eat. He warned, "If you tell anyone about me or don't turn up tomorrow, I will cut your heart out and eat it." Okay, so file means a metal tool with a rough surface used for cutting, smoothing or shaping a hard metal surface. Okay. Now, Pip had never been frightened in his life before, so he begged and asked the man with his trembling or weak voice to leave him and not to bother him. Then this man asked his name and where he lived, and told Pip that only on one condition he will allow him to go, and it was that Pip would have to promise to come back the next morning to a particular place, and in that area of soft wet land with a sharp file and with something to eat for that man. And he also warned him that if he inform anyone about him, or if he don't come back the next day, then he would cut his heart and eat it. Now, poor little Pip was terrified. Terrified means frightened or afraid. His voice shook so much that he could hardly promise, and when the men set him down, he ran home as fast as his legs could carry him. So now this little boy Pip was really frightened, and just because of it, his voice was trembling so much that he could hardly just promise. And when the man sat him down, and then this Pip, as he turned, he ran home as fast as his legs could carry him. Now, the evening was a miserable one. Pip thought he would save his own supper. Supper means dinner. Okay, for the man, and in case he was not able to get into his sister's pantry, so instead of eating his bread and butter, he slipped it down his trouser leg. Pantry means where the food items are usually kept. Now, this one, really that evening, it was very unhappy. So Pip thought that he would save his dinner for the man, because if he won't be able to get into his sister's pantry, so that's why what he got to eat, he did not eat, but quietly what he did, he kept it in his trouser pocket for the man. Now, before long, a great gun began to boom, and Pip asked Joe what it was. The blacksmith replied, "It is a signal that convicts have escaped from the prison ships on the river across the marshes." It was then that Pip realized that the man he had promised to help was a criminal, perhaps a murderer, who had got away and was hiding from the soldiers. Okay, so before long means to know without knowing anything, and so before just to know anything, Pip and Joe heard a great sound of gunshot, and then Pip asked Joe about it, and Joe replies him that it is a signal that somewhere convicts have escaped from the prison ship on the river area across the marshes. And after hearing this, Pip, now realizing that the man to whom he is going to help according the promise is no one but a criminal and maybe a murderer, so who is just hiding from the soldiers. And now the next paragraph, he could not sleep all night, certain that he would be killed if he did not steal the food. Pip crept downstairs at dawn to take some bread and cheese and a meat pie from the pantry. He then got a file from the forge and ran through the foggy morning to the marshes. Okay, so that night this little boy could not sleep, and he was sure that he was not able to steal the food, and he would surely be killed by that man. So at dawn means in the very early morning when the day breaks, he moves very quietly and slowly to the downstairs to take some bread, cheese and a meat pie, so from his sister's pantry, and then he takes a file from the forge, and on that foggy morning he ran to the marshes, and as he was about to reach, he saw the man in grey. Okay, so now let's just read further. He had not quite reached when he came on a man in grey, sitting on the ground with an iron fetter on his leg. Pip sighed in relief. Here was the man he was looking for. But as soon as he saw the bruise on the man's cheek, he realized that he was not. This man sprang to his feet and ran away as soon as he saw Pip. Bruise means injury mark. Now, just as he was about to reach, he saw the man in grey was sitting on the ground and an iron fetter fastened around his leg. So after seeing him, this little boy Pip sighed in relief, and as he thought the man he was looking for. But as he saw an injury mark on his cheek, he understood that he was not that man for whom he was looking for. But when this man saw Pip, he sprang to his feet and ran away from there. Then Pip went on, and at the right spot he found the man he was looking for. He seemed to be starving, for he snatched the food and wolfed it down. Wolfed it down means ate quickly and greedily. Now he asked Pip if he had seen anyone else on his way there, and Pip told him of the other man in grey who also wore an iron on his leg. When Pip spoke of the bruised cheek, this man flew into a rage. Seizing the file, he set to filing his fetter furiously. Furiously means angrily. Pip could see that he hated the other convict and was sorry that the other convict had escaped, but he had fulfilled his promise. So he turned and ran home again. The last thing he heard was the rasp. Rasp means unpleasant sound of the file as the man worked madly at the iron. So finally Pip went on, and at the right spot he found that man, fortunately, for whom he was looking for. And what he saw, that the man was too hungry, because that man just snatched the food from Pip's hand and he started eating it quickly and greedily. And after that he asked Pip whether he saw or met anyone on his way while coming here. Then this little boy told him of the other man who was in grey and also wore an iron chain on his leg. And when Pip told him about the man's bruised cheek, this man to whom Pip just brought the things to fed, so this man just became very angry, and he just took hold of that file and he started to cutting down his chain very angrily. So Pip understood that this man hates the other convict and was sorry that he had escaped, but Pip had fulfilled his promise. So this little boy is happy, and he turned and ran home again. And he was running back to his home. The last thing which Pip heard was the unpleasant sound of the file, because that man was cutting that iron chain from his leg angrily and madly. Okay. Now next paragraph. Pip felt very guilty that Christmas morning. Guilty means having unpleasant feeling of doing something wrong. He went to church with Joe, and later many people came to dinner. He could not enjoy the delicious food, for he knew that his sister would now discover that the meat pie was gone. Just as she went to get the pie, Pip got up from the table to run away, but as he opened the door, he ran plump into a file of soldiers. It means ran straight into a line of soldiers standing one behind the other. That Christmas morning, Pip was having very unpleasant kind of feeling of doing something wrong because he helped the convict. On that Christmas morning, he went to church with Joe, and later on that day, many people came to their house for dinner, but this little boy, he could not enjoy the delicious food which his sister cooked, because he was in fear and knew that after some time his sister would know about the meat pie, that it was gone. And as his sister went to get the pie for the guest, this little boy Pip, he just got up from there and ran outside. But as he opened the door, he ran straight into a line of soldiers standing one behind the other. Now the next is, he was sure at first that they had come to arrest him for helping the convict, and was very relieved when the officer explained that they were on their way to search the marshes for the escaped men and wanted the blacksmith to mend a broken handcuff. In the flurry of their arrival, the pie was forgotten. Joe mended the handcuff in the forge, and when the soldiers left, he set Pip on his broad shoulders and went with them to see the result of the hunt. Flurry means a short time with many activities. So now here what happened, that as Pip saw the group of soldiers, he thought that they have come to arrest him as for helping the convict. But as the officer explained that they are searching for the escaped man in the marshes, and they want the blacksmith's help to mend a broken handcuff. So when Pip came to know such, he felt that his worry has been taken away, and he became very happy and relaxed. So at the same time of this sudden arrival of the soldiers, the pie was forgotten, and then Joe went to mend the broken handcuff in the forge. And when these soldiers left from there, then Joe just made Pip to sit on his broad shoulders, and he went with them just to find what would happen. Okay, children, so for today this much story will be there, and the next further part of the story you will get in the video second part. So till then, please just learn this story, how much you have just listened today. So for the next part, we will just meet again with the next video. Until then, all the best.